All right, we're live.
Yeah.
Orange is the New Black episodes 5, 6, and 7 are over and actually have been for a couple of weeks at this point, but Taylor and we are just getting started here at Post Show Recaps. My name is Jessica Liese, and with me, as always, is the wonderful Taylor Cotter. How are you this evening, Taylor?
I'm great, Jess. How are you?
I'm great. It's Side Boob Fridays. What can I say?
Cyber Friday. It's a little post-show recaps after dark. Not really, but we're doing this on Friday night, so we'll have some fun.
Yep. It's a little bit different with Orange is the New Black because they just dump all the episodes on us at once, and we've been savoring them. So, as usual, we want to throw out the caution to everybody. We're only going to be covering episodes 5, 6, and 7 in this particular recap, and if you have watched beyond that, because only somebody that was doing a podcast on it would not do that, we want to just ask you guys not to give away anything that you might have seen that didn't happen in these 3 particular episodes. And also, if you have not seen these episodes, I would go turn this off and go watch them before you go any further, because we're going to be talking about them and you're going to get spoiled.
Spoiler alert. Cool. So, do you want to just jump right in?
Let's jump right into episode 5. And I don't know about you, Taylor, but I kind of felt like these were a bit of a letdown after the last 3.
Agreed. And I was just saying this to Jess ahead of the call, especially for episode 5. I had a huge language barrier because I did not know how to work the subtitles on my TV and don't know how to speak Spanish. So they were challenging, and I missed a lot of the plot development and the witty remarks that we've come to love so much because a lot of them were not in English or the other languages that I speak. In general, yeah, I thought these were, compared to the last 3, definitely weaker. Not as much from a personal or relationship storyline, but we're getting to what seems to be the heart of this season, which is almost more of a socio-political storyline.
Yeah, it was just kind of bridging. I think the next 3 episodes are probably going to have a lot in them, and these are just kind of bridging the gap. Like, we need to put down these blocks so that we can go to the actual meat of the story in future episodes. It was really, I know you were not a Lost watcher, and I got a lot of flack for criticizing Lost in our last recap, but it was very much like those episodes of Lost in the middle of the season that were like Sun and Jin, and like the 3rd and 4th Jack recaps, the Jack flashbacks, where you don't really care about these characters, you don't want to know their backstories, and you're just kind of twiddling your thumbs until we get back to like Sawyer or Hurley or someone you do care about. And that's what this was. This was the equivalent of the Sun and Jin flashback episodes.
Right, especially, so in these 3 episodes, we got Gloria's flashback, Pusey's flashback, and Black Cindy's flashback. And especially for Gloria and Black Cindy, those are 2 characters that I felt not super invested in. And even seeing their backstories, I didn't feel more, Gloria on some level, but I didn't necessarily feel more sympathetic towards them or understand their role in the prison anymore.
Yeah, I think, well, definitely we're going to get more into the Cindy flashback, which is interesting on a few levels, but honestly, I don't think any of the Orange is the New Black fan base was necessarily clamoring for the Cindy flashback episode.
Right, and I think it's almost a symptom of having so many actresses that are so great and all deserve to have that screen time and can all play these characters really well, but it's not sustainable to have a show where you are going so deep into the stories of every minor character. So I think that might have eaten up more time that could have been spent on the main parts of the story.
Yeah, like there are some characters we're never going to get tired of learning more about. Like every episode could be a Sophia flashback or a Red flashback, and I would be totally fine with that.
Yeah, for sure. And Suzanne, too, left us super clamoring for more. So in this episode 5, we're really it's seen a lot of filler. So we have. Where do you want to start with? Which storyline? Episode 5.
I guess the main meat of the storyline in episode 5 is kind of the jockeying for power between the little clique of Hispanic inmates and the clique of black inmates.
Right.
And that gets kicked off with the showers backing up in the cell block that they refer to as Spanish Harlem.
Mm-hmm. So all the plumbing in Spanish Harlem has completely fallen apart, and those girls want to shower, so they head over to the black bathrooms and demand that they're able to shower there.
Yeah, but they get some pushback from the inmates whose bathroom it is, and this ends up, of course, V sees this as the inroad to, like, somebody wants something, and if she can find a way to give it to them, it gives her another leg up. And
yes.
So she proposes a trade to get, like, she'll give up the bathrooms and let the kitchen staff have them if she can convince Gloria to get 2 more workers on the kitchen staff so that V has openings in custodial so she can bring on her girls and kind of have everybody working in the warehouse at the same time.
Exactly. V is quite the mastermind of everything that is going on in the prison. And at one point, I wrote down that I feel like V is the Dan Giesling of the prison system. She's just got this, this ice cold, she can cry on command. She can hit these people exactly where they want them, and she has everyone totally under her finger. I've had Big Brother on the brain the past couple days, so through a lot of this, I was drawing parallels left and right. That I was like, oh, like there's about to be a power swing, and like there's the head of this alliance and the head of this alliance. So I never felt more connected to Orange is the New Black than I did watching these 3 episodes.
Yeah. So would you say that V kind of won head of household this week?
Definitely. She is head of household, and she was able to make a long play and keep her people off the block.
Yeah. And it ends up, there's kind of a war that gets sparked off here where the Hispanic inmates start salting the black inmates' food, and I loved Puset's line that they're fucking with us this way because they know about our people's predispensation for hypertension.
That's funny. I also loved Suzanne's line. Here's a secret: pretend the salt is sugar. I like that a lot. I'm gonna use that one.
Yeah, I think we are benefiting so much from seeing Suzanne kind of come into her own social group, and it's bringing out this new side of her that we didn't really see last season.
Right.
And she's continually a delight.
Yes, I am her biggest fan at the moment. Let me see. So we can talk a little bit about the Gloria flashback, since Gloria is kind of running Spanish Harlem.
Okay, now my episode had the subtitles, so
right. So you could
probably fill in some context here.
The number one thing I am confused about is, when was she arrested? Was this recently, or was this a long time ago? Because she's dressed like it's like the 1970s. She's got these big head. But I was like, is that just her style, or is that supposed to be an indicator of how long she's been there? Because she had said something. Oh, I was wondering whether she and V had a pre-existing relationship, and I couldn't really figure that out.
Yeah, it seems like many of the inmates that have been there a long time, like Red, for example, they all kind of know V, and it's possible that there's a little pre-existing relationship there, but that's not quite clear. And right. I don't think necessarily that Gloria has been there for 40 years.
Right.
I think it's meant to convey that it's been quite a while. I don't know what the exact, what sort of sentence you would get for welfare fraud, but right. I imagine it's not a slap on the wrist.
Right. Yeah, so I was really unclear because everything kind of in her flashbacks seemed modern, but it seemed like she had been there for a long time, but it hadn't seemed like she had been there that long. So if someone has a little more insight into that I missed, feel free to let me know.
it seems like she mentioned that her children were still young enough to be living with families, so that would put them at, I mean, her little boys were not that old, so
Yeah.
it would have to be less than 10 years.
Yeah, I definitely, yeah. In looking at the flashbacks, I think it was just she happened to dress in a 70s style, not necessarily that it. I think if it was the 1970s, they would have done more to illustrate that.
Yeah, you would have had, like, disco music playing in the background, and you would have
Right.
had people, like, dropping really obvious cultural references,
Yeah.
like, hey, how about that son of Sam killer? Aren't you glad they caught him?
There would be lava lamps all over the convenience stores.
Yeah.
Probably. Do you want here? Why don't you describe what happens in the Morello flashback?
Okay. So, it looks like Gloria is the proprietor of a convenience store slash spiritual guidance service, and she, I mean, the front part of the store looks exactly like the Quick Stop in Clerks,
Mm-hmm.
and she sells cigarettes and beer, and she can also take EBT cards for food items. And Gloria's side racket is that she is selling things to people that you can't usually spend food stamp money on, and she's pocketing the extra food stamp money and reporting to the government that she's selling things that she didn't sell.
Mm-hmm.
And this eventually catches up with her. But she has a husband who's Dominican. I assume they're both Dominican. They don't really spell that out, but that's what I'm going to go with. He says he's Dominican,
Mm-hmm.
and he is abusive. And she is trying to save up enough money to leave him, basically.
Yeah. So yeah, that all made sense. And as soon as he kind of starts being more abusive towards her kids, that's her sort of last straw. And so she's with, is it her aunt? And she's kind of convincing her, her to leave him and to take off.
Yeah, basically. And kind of one of the undercurrents running through all of this is that, again, she's very spiritual, and she calls it, like, Catholic Plus, and I went online and looked this all up because
Oh, awesome.
And because I'm kind of the Cliff Clavin of post-show recaps, but this particular brand of spirituality that Gloria's family practices it's kind of a melding of Catholicism and the Yoruba religion, which is Dominican, and it's Dominican via Africa, and so they have these spirits called orishas, and they explain it back in the prison. They say orishas have the saint names so that the slaves wouldn't be seen practicing African religions.
Yeah.
So she performs spiritual cleansings, they call that limpieza, and she kind of casts these spells to help people succeed in business. And the guy that ends up turning her in to the authorities is a guy who asked for a spiritual cleansing and did not receive the desired outcome, and he assumes it's because she did it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and then how? So her husband ends up dying in a fire. How? I didn't really understand how that happened either.
Well, after she got turned in, he went to go retrieve the welfare fraud money, and he is trying to exit through the back room where all of the candles are, and he's complaining throughout the whole episode, why do you have all these candles? This is a fire hazard. And, it's Chekhov's candle. He kicks one over, whole place goes up, and the doors are locked. And they don't really explain whether somebody manually locked the doors, at least as far as I could tell. And someone can correct me in the chat room if they saw differently, but it looked like the doors just kind of locked on their own, and they don't say whether someone was on the other side of it or whether we're meant to believe that it's something kind of supernatural. But he gets burned to death because he is locked up in the candle closet.
Okay, and I think that's where I got confused the first time I watched it. I watched it right after we finished our last episode, but I didn't pay close attention, and I thought that she had done that, and ultimately that was her crime, or that's why she ended up there. And then the food stamp fraud was a
like a red herring.
Exactly, and
Morello and the stalking and the eBay fraud.
Right. But it ended up being that it was a coincidence that he, died in a fire when he had hurt her so much. It was just kind of a...
Actually, Mike Bloom has this.
Oh, good. Jessica has frozen on me.
Says that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I can still hear you.
Okay, all right. You froze for a sec, but you're there.
Okay, yeah, I'm here. So, Mike says we can assume that she got the automatically locking doors and he left the keys in the store. So that makes a lot of sense. I like putting on the tinfoil hat and kind of trying to speculate that someone was actually killing him, but I think it was just sort of karma catching up with him.
Mm-hmm. Mike Bloom put something else in the chat that says, what's the timeline with Gloria's store catching fire? Mike Bloom, I barely know the timeline of anything going on in the show. Did it happen immediately after she got arrested, and does she know it happened? I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't know either. But
I think it's interesting if she doesn't know for sure. But I have to imagine that she knows at this point because she keeps in somewhat touch with her family.
Yeah, I'm sure that her friend or her aunt or whoever that woman was that took the kids to Florida, I assume she knows what happened to the guy.
Right. So I guess my question now is, what was this whole backstory supposed to teach us about Gloria? Was it kind of to show her, that she's pretty tough and she's a good mom and, she's going to take care of her people to any extent? Or was there something else there?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a lot of that, and also that Gloria feels that she has a higher power working through her.
Right.
At least, like, semi-cynically, she says that she just praised everybody because it couldn't hurt, but she is a little bit superstitious, I think.
Interesting. I think that'll probably rear its head at some point.
Yeah.
So the other continuing storyline through this episode is the sex contest between Big Boo and Nichols.
Yeah, and we were saying last episode we weren't sure what the terms of that exactly were. It turns out it's not really a game of sexual Quidditch, which would have been more fun, maybe.
It's still a very advanced system, and I kind of love it. It's like, they're putting together basically a fantasy league, no pun intended, that of how many points everyone is worth and something. And it's very involved. I liked the fact that they had a logistical system set up.
Yeah, and I love that they brought in Chang to be like their slap bet commissioner and keep track of all of this.
I love Chang. If there's a minor character I want to know more about, she's on the list. If we're getting into Gloria and Black Cindy, let's get some Chang in there too.
Yeah, she's definitely ranking higher than Cindy, for example.
Yes.
Yeah, so Nikki and Boo go about this in very different ways. I feel like I want to see them on like Survivor or Big Brother because they have different approaches and they have strategy here. Like we have Nikki who's immediately going for the 10-point haul, but Boo is valuing quantity over quality. I'm not sure who's got the better strategy here.
Yeah, I think Boo had the better strategy. I think that I don't know how many women were on the board, but I would go with the Boo strategy. I feel like she locked in some sure things well before Nichols locked in anything.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, Nichols wasted days trying to even get on the board, and Fisher was having none of that. And in fact, as we're gonna see, Nikki kind of put something in motion that's gonna have some repercussions.
Yes.
By pointing out to Fisher that she knows where all the places are that you can hide from surveillance, it kind of sets something going in Fisher's head that we're going to see pay off.
Right. So they're pretty funny. I like them as friends and moving forward, and I think there's a lot of quick-witted dialogue happening between the groups. I liked when Boo told Piper that you're not easy, you only fucked your worst enemy. So that I like that they kind of roast each other. It seems like they're all, just a group of friends now, which is kind of sweet.
Yeah, I was fond of, I feel like Icarus whose wings melted before he could fuck the sun.
Yep. That was great too.
All right, so speaking of Piper, she finds out some news from the outside.
Mm-hmm.
She's speaking to her brother and her mother, and she finds out via this really messed up guessing game that her grandmother's dying.
I like that. I love both the actors that play Piper's brother and mother. They're both comedians and really kind of punch up a little bit of what's funny about Piper's life. So I like their little guessing game. And Piper's grandma's sick, and as we saw in the flashback, Piper's grandma is, one of the people in her family she trusts, and she wants to get out for a few days and be able to go visit her before she dies.
Yeah, but of course the person she has to go through is not the president of the Piper fan club by any stretch.
Right.
And Healy he's a little more sympathetic than we would have thought, and I can't tell how much of that is Healy just going through his own stuff, or also kind of realizing how badly he mishandled the whole Piper Pennsatucky.
I'm so confused about Healy. I was so in the camp that he is, in everything for the wrong reasons, is a misogynistic person for whatever reason, not a person that's interested in being friendly to any of the inmates, and more and more that doesn't seem to be true. That these 3 episodes he comes off as somewhat personable, and you can see that he's getting there, and it's not that it wasn't like a character change, but in these 3 episodes we kind of see him as a little more of a real guy.
Yeah, I don't think necessarily, it's complicated with Healy. I don't think he necessarily would care in a vacuum what anybody thought of him, but he's mortal like everybody else, and he certainly cares about what people think of him, and when you find out over and over that people don't like you,
mm-hmm.
it wears on you after a while, and I think Healy's starting to realize exactly how much of a dick everybody thinks he is.
Right. And I guess you kind of you think like, oh, this is just kind of like a schmucky guy that wants to fit in, wants to be well-liked, wants to have a successful marriage and have friends at work and just kind of normal desires. But then he's done so many very terrible things, like not the least of which is leaving Piper and Pennsatucky to kill each other, that where do his loyalties really lie and what's actually going on with him?
Yeah. Well, we see a little bit more into his world and his wife that hates him,
mm-hmm.
and even the people in the prison that he used to have a semi-friendly relationship with, like Red, for example. Red's not interested in helping him out anymore.
Right.
So he's wandering around, he decides to go get a drink, and this is where we find out about Caputo's other life as the bass player for Side Boob.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
and I have it written down that this is the world's dorkiest band, but actually it turns out that on the coolness spectrum of the staff at Litchfield, Caputo is actually one of the cooler guys.
Yeah, I'm a big Caputo fan. I think that I love everything about Side Boob. I thought their second song was great. I guess the coal miner song that they played over the end credits. It's a metaphor. I was a big fan, and I hope we continue to see them, and hopefully they have some music videos that they can put out on YouTube.
Yeah, that's a secret scene that needs to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Healy and Caputo hang out at the bar, and basically Healy is really you can tell he's really thrilled to have a friend that he can go to the bar with, and Caputo is a cool guy. He's in a band, and everyone likes him.
Yeah, it's so painfully awkward, and you see Healy is just like grasping at this crumb of attention from anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And Caputo's just like, oh, it's this dude I work with. Let's drink together because he came to see my band, and
yeah,
that's all it is to Caputo, which we find out in the next episode. But it makes Healy feel better enough that he comes back to work and he approves Piper's furlough submission and puts it forward to the warden.
Yep. So I think at the end of the day, I think Healy is just a guy that wants to be included and wants to have friends and kind of go forward. And that's why this is at the end of the next episode, but we see him have a connection with someone else who's in that very similar situation. So, yeah, I was so convinced that he was a villain, but I'm not all there anymore.
Well, that's the thing about this show. I don't think there are very few people that I would be prepared to say are out-and-out villains. Everybody's got another facet to them, except maybe Pornstache, but we haven't seen Pornstache at all this season. I'm kind of okay with that.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that actor's off doing bigger things.
Yeah, I would not have pegged him as the breakout star, but, you know.
Yeah. A quick sidebar. I don't know if you're a fan of this show, but an article came out this week that was almost every single person on Orange is the New Black in their role on Law and Order. It was amazing. If you're even like a remote fan of Law and Order, this list, this reporter went and cross-referenced IMDb profiles, went and watched every single episode, screenshot. It was so great. I'll get the link on the show page because it was absolutely amazing. And you see that some of them, it's just one little role. Some of them, I think it was the actress that plays Gloria, has had 4 different, 4 individual roles on the show throughout the years. So it's Law and Order casting is inherently kind of funny, so to see it in this context was awesome.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you live in New York and are trying to act for any significant amount of time and you have any degree of success, Law and Order is almost always a stepping stone to that. So I'm not totally surprised, but it is still kind of mind-blowing to see all the different ways that people have come through that franchise.
Right, the sheer number of them was just awesome. I would say probably 95% of the actors had roles at one point or another. And a lot in the past couple years.
Yeah, well, it's a 20-year-old show at this point, which also makes me feel incredibly old. All right, so that should wrap it up for episode 5, I think. I mean, there are a couple other things, like I have that we saw a little bit of Larry, but my notes on Larry are nobody cares about Larry, so we're going to skip that.
Yep, same.
So episode 6, I liked it as a piece of television, but as an Orange is the New Black episode, I feel like it leaves a little to be desired because it sort of whitewashes prison, paints it as this kind of cutesy, happy place like Saved by the Bell, the prison years.
Yeah, it was
very high school sitcom-y to me.
It was very cute, and I thought it was funny, and I thought this last year with the Christmas episode too, that if this was a normal show that followed, an arc from September to May, this would be the Valentine's episode. This would be a very special holiday episode that they showed, and it read that way. It read as okay, we're not going to do anything that's too insane or too depressing because this is a television event, and you're going to watch it with your families. Not like me that watched it at 6 p.m. on a Friday on my couch. Everyone watches Orange is the New Black. So I wonder.
Don't ever watch this show with your parents. Seriously.
No. Yeah, I think most people just consume this show while lying in bed or lying on the couch, and definitely not the 8 p.m. primetime slot that this episode read like.
Yeah, but it's kind of framed with what Mike Bloom is calling the When Harry Met Sally interstitials. Everybody's answering the question of what is love, and they all have these kind of profound answers. I had 2 favorites. My one favorite was Norma talking about being asleep and waking up.
Very cute.
She's adorable.
Yeah.
Everything he does is gold. And then my other favorite was Flocka and Maritza talking about how they're in a bath made of chocolate pudding with 5 dudes massaging, and the Smiths are playing There's a Light That Never Goes Out. Yeah. And also there's pizza. Of course there's pizza.
That was perfect. I want to write that down and frame it and hang it in my house because I felt like it was pretty much perfect.
Yeah, that's all that anybody should want out of life. And it was a nice callback to Maritza last season trying to run for the WAC board, and her slogan involved pizza. So it's safe to say she's a woman that knows what she wants.
I like her a lot.
Yeah.
And so in this episode, we get a decent amount, and in the episode 7 as well, of Bennett kind of setting himself up for what I can only assume is an epic downfall. Now that they know that they can sneak things into, or most of the Hispanic people know that they can sneak things into the prison using the cavity in his artificial leg, I guess you would call that.
Yeah.
And somehow they found this out, not surprisingly, and they all know about his relationship with Daya, so they are starting to blackmail him.
Yeah, they've really got him over a barrel this episode, and it's... Yeah. I mean, something's going to give, and of course we see that it does, but he's really in a tough spot there. There's nothing that he can do. He's going to get reported if he doesn't do it. I mean, I don't know exactly how serious that threat is, but it's enough to get him bringing things in.
Definitely.
But he and Daya are trying to make this be a normal Valentine's Day because they're trying to continue this like normal relationship pretense.
Mm-hmm.
And they talk about, like, they make up this whole kind of world in their head. And Daya's kind of hormonal, so she goes off the rails a couple of times. Which I thought, having known people that are pregnant, I thought that was pretty accurate. Like, she's kind of volatile at times, and then all of a sudden she's really, really horny, and then she's kind of nesting and cuddly. And in the middle of all this, she reveals that she got a card in the mail, and it's not signed, but it's
misspelled.
She assumes it's from Bennett, and it's very much not. And
no.
It is from the...
I lost Jess again.
Okay,
you're there.
Yeah. I haven't had good internet this week. I think our internet... Yeah. We've been having a little internet drought here. So, yeah, I guess this was a hint that they haven't dropped that idea that he's out there, and he's definitely coming back. So, that was good to remember, like, hey, remember there's still a really evil guy out there who's in love with Daya, and he's probably going to be the one that rips this whole thing wide open if, Bennett doesn't get tired of being blackmailed.
Yeah, I think we are teetering on the edge of this completely falling apart, and I don't understand how it could not fall apart, so I think, it's on its way.
Yeah, but I think it's really a sign of great storytelling. You see this over and over in TV. Like, it was on Breaking Bad a lot, where you thought, this has to be it. Like, it's going to blow up in their faces now.
Mm-hmm.
And then stuff keeps happening to kind of prolong the tension. And that's one of the things I love in storytelling. And so if that's how we're going to have this unfold, I'm totally okay with that.
Mm-hmm. How pregnant is she?
Well, I think she's not showing yet.
Yeah.
But it's been a few months. It's got to be 3 or 4 months at this point.
Right. And refresh my memory on season 1. So everyone thinks that the higher-ups think that Pornstache raped her, and that's how she got pregnant?
Nobody knows she's pregnant at this point except the kitchen staff. But they're actually about to find out at the end of the next episode.
Right, okay. And I guess that's what...
Pornstache is in trouble because he was smuggling drugs into the prison.
Okay.
He's not in trouble for raping anybody yet, but I'm sure that's coming.
Right, and I thought that was the whole point of why they set him up to have sex with her, was to to get him fired as well as explain her pregnancy.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And so, because, that's going to come out. She's not going to be able to hide that forever.
Right. So she's kind of waiting for the right time to reveal this.
Yeah. Okay. And she might even be one of those people that claims that she had no idea, like, it was one of those TLC toilet babies.
Yes. That's what I had predicted, but I can only hope not. So in this episode, we get the Krazee backstory, which is one that I was really excited about and ultimately kind of let down by.
Yeah, it was. I mean, some of it was kind of a surprise, and the first time I watched it, I didn't have subtitles either, but I speak enough German that I got the gist of it, and then I had subtitles the second time on a different device. So she was an army brat, which I think we kind of sort of knew. I think it's been mentioned, but she was kind of rebellious, and she had a girlfriend at the base in Germany, and the girlfriend was German, and the dad was her dad's boss.
Right.
And
go ahead.
So her girlfriend's dad walks in on them like shortly after they were scissoring, and proving that scissoring is not a thing.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that is kind of hilarious that in the subtitle. Like the rest of it, you can kind of.
We're frozen. Should come back.
Get
just a second. Yeah.
So yeah, the girlfriend's dad walks in, and immediately Krazee-Eyez's dad gets transferred out, and Krazee-Eyez is heartbroken.
Yeah, and she is going to try to kill this girl's dad, it seems like, which seems excessive. And I guess I didn't remember, but I looked up on the Orange is the New Black wiki that we already, I guess, had known that Krazee was in. What Krazee was in for. This may be from a future episode. Am I wrong? Because I did.
I saw it on the forums on previously.tv. They were saying that she says she's in for selling pot.
Right. So I looked that up, and I couldn't remember that, so I didn't know if it was from a future episode or not. So kind of a minor spoiler.
Yeah, I don't think this is going to be. This is not going to blow Orange is the New Black wide open.
Right.
We're not talking character deaths or anything.
Right. And I guess
it's trivial.
It's definitely trivial, but it makes me upset that these flashbacks now are not kind of telling the story of how they got there. And they're interesting, and I like Krazee a lot. I think she's like one of the funniest and most interesting characters. But I don't think this it gave us more insight into Krazee sexuality and Krazee kind of attitude and where she grew up, but it doesn't explain how she ended up in prison. And I think that's the most interesting thing about these people, at least. And maybe it's not, maybe that's what they're trying to say is, the most interesting thing about Krazee is not that isn't that she sold pot, it's that she had this kind of life in Germany and that was taken away from her because of, someone that was not thrilled with her relationship. So I'm kind of coming to this realization now because in my notes I'm saying, oh, these backstories aren't fulfilling what I would want these backstories to fulfill, but they're kind of showing, I guess, some more humanity to these prisoners. And as I had that soliloquy, Jess has fallen off the call. So let's see if Scott has any audience questions by any chance? Awesome. Mike Bloom asks, who would you want to see have a flashback episode of all the characters outside of the prison? I would love to see the life Cal has led thus far. He's very funny. I like Cal a lot. All right, Jess is back. I'm
sorry about that.
No problem. I took a question while you were gone. I think I would like to see Cal and a couple members of Piper's family. I guess if you count this as outside the prison, I would like to see the Healy backstory and even the Susan Fisher backstory. I think these correctional officers have kind of interesting motives, and I don't know if we're ever going to get the direct explanation for
I mean, if we're going to get a flashback from one of the staffers, I think it has to be Healy. But I think we're certainly getting a lot more of the we're getting a lot more of the staff than we were last season. Like, we had a couple of hints of, like, they're in the laundry and they see that what's his name, the pudgy guy with the fad diets.
I forget his name.
Yeah, O'Neill?
Yeah.
Yeah, O'Neill. We see that O'Neill and Wanda Bell have this thing going on. And we start to see, actually, this episode had a lot of staff content.
Mm-hmm. And I think that leads up to kind of the political nature of what's going on is these prisons are staffed by possibly some of the worst prison staffers that they could find. I hope these are the worst.
The theme of the episode was everybody being really bad at their jobs.
Yep. So we have the return of Side Boob, and Side Boob is having a Valentine's Day concert, and Caputo is trying to get with Fisher. So he invites her and gets her off work that night, and Healy wants to go because it's Side Boob Tuesdays, and he's really excited, and it basically seems like the whole gang heads over to the bar except for Bennett and a couple other less senior correctional officers.
Whoever got roped into working the Valentine's Day dance, which is such a Saved by the Bell device. Or it's like they were always making fun of that in Community, like there was always some themed dance going on. And
right.
I feel like this is kind of beneath the show. But anyway, so while the dance is going on at the prison, there's a big concert going on with Side Boob, and Caputo is it's so sad for him because he thinks he's finally getting somewhere with Fisher, and she's very clearly, she pulls that classic move of, he thinks it might be a date, so she brings a whole bunch more people to show him that it's definitely not a date.
Yeah, I think that was pretty real, and I'm a big fan of Fisher. I think she's got some stuff going on below the surface, so I like that she kind of did that, and it was funny. I liked seeing the whole gang out.
Yeah. How do you feel about the sparks that are flying between Fisher and Luschek?
I'm a fan. I think they're really adorable. I think that it doesn't bode well in general, probably for the prison system, but as two people, I think they're both kind of funny and cute.
Yeah, I totally ship it. I don't think it's got long-term staying potential, but I like the two of them together, and the actors are great, and the dynamic is great. I want to see that kind of come to fruition, if for no other reason than it bothers Caputo, and that causes tension as well.
I know. I do like nice guy Caputo, though, so I hope this doesn't, send him off the edge.
Yeah, but he's going to be okay. It's not like Healy, who doesn't have anything else going on. Caputo's got his gardening and his band and his pet turtle. I think it's going to be okay.
I hope so. So there's a lot going on in this episode.
Yeah. So let's go to Red.
Okay.
Red is finally back in the game for real.
Yeah. So I was gonna say, in our last episode, we were like, why is Red so obsessed with this garden? Like, what is she doing, and why does she care that she found some sort of hole in the ground in the garden? But lo and behold, it obviously is that she can transport stuff through this tunnel system, a sewer system. I'm really not clear.
It's got to be a little bit cleaner and better than the Shawshank sewer system. Because she's got Vasily and Dimitri bringing stuff in through this tunnel, and it's a better system than what she had with the produce guy.
Yeah, it's a direct connection. They're right, they bring her exactly what she wants, and it's there in a timely manner.
Yeah, so I think it's good for Red, and she needs something because her social group is totally shattered. It seems like she's fit in pretty well with the Golden Girls, but Norma and Gina have still not forgiven her for the fire.
Right.
And they are really not having any of it. And you have Nikki has that same kind of cynical detachment that she has with everybody. I think she has forgiven Red a little bit more than the other two, but she's not really there either yet.
Yeah, I'm interested to see, and obviously the stuff that Red is bringing in enters itself into the economy of the prison system, but right now Red is kind of got her own thing going on, while V and Gloria are fighting out the internal barter wars. Red kind of seems to be sitting pretty while they do the dirty work.
Yeah. Yeah, V's got her business off the ground as well in this episode. She's zeroed in on one niche, and again, she finds the thing that people, and I was surprised that Tasty was so willing to walk away from her library job.
It seems like they just got her reassigned to custodial.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Tasty's on board with this plan. Suzanne is on board with the plan. Black Cindy is on board, kind of, and V has got an operation going where they are rolling their own cigarettes and selling them to the inmates.
Yeah, and it's something nobody's tried yet, so I think it seems to be working out all right. But you can kind of see some of the life going out of Tasty over the course of this story arc. It's not good for her in a lot of ways, and it's, V is separating her from her best friend Krazee, which actually is one of the more poignant dynamics there, which there's a scene in the next episode that is just heartbreaking about this.
Yeah.
So I think that it's going to end up, I think everybody's going to end up very fractured, this whole enterprise.
Yeah, it's definitely... Go ahead.
Yeah, it doesn't have staying power, but I think V is going to burn very brightly, very rapidly.
Right, and she's really manipulated these girls into working for her and doing what they say, and she has convinced them that it's in their best interest, that they're getting basically a profit share out of it, and she, if anything goes wrong, she'll take the fall. And we hear Poussey kind of, I am not sure if this is in this episode or the next episode, but Poussey kind of explains what's going on from the opposite perspective, that V has put herself in a position where she has no obligation, that if something goes wrong, she completely has no responsibility in that situation. And Scott, are there any more questions? Mike Bloom, are there any more questions? Oh, from Monica Fabian. Santori isn't just Dominican, is Afro-Caribbean and also in Cuba and Puerto Rico. Pretty sure Gloria is Puerto Rican or Cuban. She and her boyfriend made a big deal about him being Dominican. That makes a lot of sense. I'm not, I think I have heard her say she was Puerto Rican. Jess is having continuous internet issues. So let's see if we can get her back, but if not, we may close out and finish episode 7 later. Scott? Let's see if we can get Jessica and we can potentially close out really quickly. Hey, how's it going?
All right, I'm back again.
Okay. All right, let's do episode 6, and then if we want to stall 7, we can stall 7.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, we might have to stall 7. We could do some extra episodes. I'm sure extra episodes would not be a problem.
No.
I think we've been having some internet issues, ever since we got back to town. In fact, we've been trying to watch things on Netflix. I tried to watch everything in extra time, and it kept buffering so much I couldn't even get back on it.
Yeah.
So, well, let's wrap up 6, and then...
Yeah. So I think there's 2 more very important things that happen in episode 6. One, and this then kind of backtrack explains why Piper's taping all these videos, or I guess she's not really taping them, it's a television show, but why all these episodes, is that she's starting a prison newspaper.
Yeah, and I can't tell, I want to get your take on this, actually, because I wasn't entirely sure if she was if she had this plan in her head crystallizing, or if she just sort of blurted it out in the heat of the moment to explain what she was doing. Because
I think she just blurted it out. I think that so Larry has approached Piper and says that he wants to write an expose on the prison system, and he wants her to be the mole, which leads into another Piper and Larry fight. Not that important, but that she kind of starts getting this idea that she's going to ask these questions, find out what's really going on. She's kind of curious anyway because she feels abused by this system. And starting this newsletter is a way for her to answer those questions, as well as kind of keep herself busy and do something interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think, like, the more she thought about it, the better it sounded. And I like this. I like where this is going with the newsletter. And I also, this just underlines how Larry is the absolute worst. Like, I really hated him here. Because, first he wants to poach this story from the journalist guy. He doesn't have any original ideas. Every good idea he's had has either revolved around something Piper came up with, or it's been a terrible idea, or he's just outright stealing it from someone else. So it doesn't surprise me that he's been, mooching off of his parents this entire time, because he has no useful skills.
Right, yeah, he is the worst, and that's kind of what he and Piper get in a big fight about, and then he gets so mad after this fight that he goes and kisses Polly, which, who cares? And
she's also the worst.
Yeah, she's the worst, he's the worst, I guess, but that's happening kind of as a subtext to all this that's totally irrelevant, and Piper is going, at least he serves as the catalyst to get her thinking about what was actually going on around her.
Yeah. And, if it gives Piper something useful to do, if this whole mess kind of puts her in a position where she's doing something productive, I think that can only be good things.
Yeah. And so we didn't even bring this up in episode 5, which is where this kind of started. These 3 episodes had sort of a nice arc for a new character whose name I do not know. I watched all 3 of these episodes, and I don't know if they ever said what her name is.
You froze again for a second.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so we have a new character, and she is one of Red's old ladies that works in the garden. And the first episode, you get a couple, she says a couple of things that let you know that she's a little bit senile and probably, has some form of dementia, and she asks, she says, like, I'm going to visit my husband, kind of stuff that you hear that no one takes really seriously. In the second episode, while the prison is totally understaffed at the Valentine's Day party, she quite easily slips out and leaves with seemingly no problem at all.
Yeah, well, we got Bennett busy banging Dia in Caputo's office. You got half the staff partying at the bar.
Mm-hmm.
It's not surprising. And I'm going to be willing to bet this is not the last time someone does this season.
No.
But, of course, Jimmy winds up. It was a relief to find out she wasn't going to die of exposure.
Right.
And all she does is go to the bar.
Yep, where all the correctional officers happen to be. So that was definitely a funny shot, unexpected to see her there. And it kind of shown, at first you think it's kind of just shining a light on, there's another inmate in here that is, a little out of it and doing things that are crazy. But really what it's doing is shining a light on how incompetent and dangerous it is for some people to be in this prison system, or not how incompetent these correctional officers are, and how dangerous it is for people to be in this system.
Yeah, and we're starting to, it's kind of gradually feeding in all of these little hints at how things at the prison are supposed to be better than they are.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're learning this episode that there are a lot of repairs that have allegedly been made that nobody actually ever did, and you see that there's a whole bunch of extensive plumbing work that needs to happen that can't happen.
Yeah.
And then they're understaffed, and the whole thing's kind of falling apart around them, and that we still don't know exactly why that is. Like, where is all this money going?
Right, Piper's digging, and that seems. I can only assume that at some point that's going to start being problematic when, these ladies don't want to answer her questions about love and relationships, so she asks them pre-pointed questions about maintenance that's been done in the building. So she's smart here, and I think that it's going to be an interesting thing.
Yeah, and finally it gives Piper something to do that we care about, which is another thing that was sorely lacking. Apparently.
And speaking of things that Piper does that we don't care about, she gets a Valentine from what appears to be a Valentine in the mail from AV Heart, and which she promptly throws away, which is probably both good and bad for the storyline.
Yeah, well, honestly, the Piper-Alex thing is played out, and I'd be fine if that was the last thing we ever heard about that.
Right.
Although I suspect it is not.
No, I think we'll definitely get a little bit more, but it's interesting, and I liked that it was kind of a nod that we're going to be focusing on some other people right now. Those were the two biggest things that I had.
Yeah. Well, we've also got Healy kind of having an unexpected moment.
Right.
With an inmate.
Yeah.
Which was really heartwarming. He finds himself out on the bench, like, by himself being sad, and Pennsatucky comes out and gives him a hug.
Yep, and she's also sad. She's being kind of ousted from her friend group, and Leanne is taking over, so she's looking for some solace, and she finds it in Healy.
Yeah, and they're both kind of gradually realizing that nobody likes them, and maybe they can just like each other. Fully platonically, but I think that's something that both characters needed. I think it made them both much more sympathetic.
Great. Agreed. And I'd be remiss to not mention my favorite part of this episode, which was So explaining the conspiracy theories about Ferris Bueller, because I have found myself in very similar situations explaining that exact theory to people that are just sort of like, oh, we couldn't care less about your internet conspiracy theories. So yeah. That was a kindred moment that I had with So, and I thought was hilarious.
Yeah. Actually, Mike brings up a thing we didn't talk about that we should probably touch on. He wants to know what we think of the Morello Krazee-Eyez scene, which might be one of the best scenes that we've seen on the series so far.
Yeah, I mean...
So revealing for both of them.
Right. Those two characters are so interesting and have so many different levels to them, as we've kind of learned at the beginning of the season. And now every time that Morello's on screen, you're just like mind blown because she's so different than what you originally thought. So I think to see her kind of open up to Krazee-Eyez was heartwarming, and I am both excited and terrified for where their relationship is going to go.
Yeah, and that was kind of, they're so two sides of the same coin in a lot of ways, because you saw Suzanne in the first season seemed like she was totally insane on every level, and it turns out that she says a lot of the more reasonable things that people say on the show. And then you had Morello, who looked totally normal, and it turns out there's all of this stuff going on inside of her.
Right.
And she puts on a very brave face, but is kind of crazy on the inside. So to have the two of them hook up in that way is really, I think it's good for both of them.
I agree. I think that'll be really interesting, and I hope we get enough information about that going forward, because they're two that I like a lot. And on that note, are you there?
Yeah, I think we have hit all of the notes that need to be hit. And we will cover... We can cover 4 episodes in the next episode, I think. In our next recap, we can just jump into 7 and, bang out 8, 9, and 10.
Sure, yeah, a super special. So...
And I will have my internet fixed by then.
That's fine with me. So today you'll get a short episode with us, and then later this week or next week you'll get a supersized episode, and you'll have all of your Orange is the New Black coverage for however way you have chosen to watch this show, in whatever pacing.
Yep. So if you guys enjoy what you're hearing, we would strongly encourage you to subscribe on iTunes and give us a review, because that bumps us up in the ratings, brings in more people, which brings in more feedback, which makes the show better.
Yes.
And you can follow us both on Twitter. My Twitter handle is Haymaker Hattie, and Taylor's is Taylor Cotter.
Yes, and feel free to tweet us about Orange is the New Black, and we'd love to continue the conversation.
Yeah, shout out your questions.
Oh, we lost Jess. Shout any questions you have. Let us know. I'm certainly not an expert on this show, so any context that you can give, like Monica did tonight, very helpful. Love to see it. Feel free to tweet us, comment on post show recaps, and we'd love to keep talking. Everyone, follow us on Twitter to find out when the next episode is going to be, and have a good night.